Hi everyone, it's Celeste from Me After Work with our next episode of You Don't Know What You Don't Know Until You Know. And today we're joined by Vijay Gokarn. And we're going to be talking on the subject of enlightenment, self-realization, liberation, self-abidence. You know, Vijay, when I think about you, anyone could walk past you and not know, you're an engineer, you've got a normal job, I think you're a project manager, you work in the CBD for a company, you don't run your own business or anything like that. You live a pretty simple life. I could walk past you in the street not knowing how spiritually, I don't know if awareness is the word, but evolved you are until you actually spend time with you, and that's why we're interviewing today, because I think it's been a gift for me to get to know you better in my life, and definitely think if anyone passes you in their life, then it'd be a real blessing. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
What is the difference between liberation, self-realization, enlightenment, and self-abidence? Like, these are massive words. They have so many meanings to different people, but what do they mean to you, and are there any difference?
These are only words, basically, because language is a means of communication, and you can put any words you wish, and you can name anything you wish, but ultimately what is, it doesn't change. It's always constant. It always has been, always is, and always will be. If we can consider that in the time concept that society has created. Having said that, the truth is, it always is, because it's never ever different. The words are always something that point towards what it is, but that's not the truth. They are only pointers.
Oh, okay. So sometimes we can get lost in the words, but it's only directional.
Because the word is basically a formation of a concept in the mind. And the mind is something that absorbs thoughts and dissipates what it thinks is right and wrong based on the intellect's capacity. But truth is truth, because essentially when one considers the so-called concept of self-awareness and abidance in truth, the conscious awareness part of it comes in only when the individual is there as a doer. Because when the doer is there, the doership becomes strong, then there is a notion, and mind you the word notion, because it's only a notion, it's only an illusory notion that I am doing it. And when that happens, all the associated issues with I am happy, I am sad, I am good, I am bad, I wish I could do this, I wish I could not do this, all these things arise. Essentially, all this is only a concept and a notion formed due to the doership aspect of that so-called individual.
So this podcast is complete doership, and we should just get rid of it.
That's right. That's right. Because ultimately, all is as is, and awareness is the only thing that is the absolute truth. But the reason why so many scriptures and so many texts have been written over millennia, the only reason is because the so-called individuals have caught themselves up in a imaginary trap. And because of the feeling that I'm trapped and I want to get liberated, basically there's nothing to get liberated from. You already are that. Because if there is something that needs to be attained, then that attainment will also be limited.
So how come some people think about it and other people, it would never register in their whole life about this idea of liberation or abidance or...
That is possibly because there's too much of a thick veil that has been put forward, veil as in V-E-I-L.
Like a fog?
Like a fog, which covers the truth. And you are that truth, but that cannot be seen as such because of that fog that has been created.
Let's wait a second.
It's an illusory fog here.
For the fog, because this is... Maybe just give us a bit of background about your... how you got to where you got to in your life now. So I know you've studied a lot of scripture, in the last 20, 30 years, but tell us a bit about that so people can have a bit of a background.
Generally, this is a question that is not something that can be answered, because when the clarity of vision is already there and the doership aspect is not there, it is only talking about a concept that existed before.
Okay. What's the concept that existed before?
So the concept that existed was that the body, mind, intellect is an entity and it's going through the trammels of good, bad, evil, joy, suffering, etc. And the swing of the pendulum, swinging through the amplitude of joy and suffering, good and bad, etc., has been going on since the body came into birth.
So since you were born, for the last how many years, you had the pendulum?
The pendulum goes on, and that pendulum goes on for every conceptual body, mind, intellect that considers oneself as the doer. It is only when the swing of the pendulum reduces to an extent where it becomes absolutely still. In that stillness, truth is revealed. It is not as if truth was never there. It is revealed because the fog disappears. The curtain, the conceptual, notional curtain that is there, it disappears. Okay. It is like one goes through, and the question may be asked, why then do we have to go through all this so-called work to sadhana, or whatever you call it, practices, to be able to realize that you are that totality of consciousness, you are that pure awareness. Why does one have to do that?
Yeah, why?
That's the question. Because of the fact that one considers oneself as the doer and is suffering, and because one is suffering, one wants to go and achieve happiness. Though one is already that happiness itself, but one doesn't know that. So one considers that I am going through that suffering. The body undergoes, mind you, all the sages and saints in the past have had the body that went through pain. Pain is one thing, the body undergoes pain. But when the doership aspect is there, and that association of I am this body, mind, intellect is there, then the suffering arises.
Can you explain being the doer. Like, what does that mean? Doership.
The doership is basically that it's simple as what I just stated. I am the one who's suffering.
So I need to do this to get this. That's
correct,
that notion.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
But
so
when
I need
there
to
is,
clean the house to
correct.
Feel better, or I need to make sure I have enough money to look after my family.
There's nothing wrong in that,
Yeah.
Celeste. There's nothing wrong in doing what is required to be done in the moment. There is nothing wrong in even arranging and organizing things.
Oh, it's your attachment to it.
It's an attachment to it. Whenever there is an association with the past and utilizing the past, there's no harm in utilizing the past and using the memories to be able to act in the moment. The body and mind and intellect does act in the moment based on memories. It's only when one starts wallowing in a pool of self-pity, remembering the past, or glorifying oneself by what one has achieved in the past, or fabricating an unknown future and then wondering whether that goal can be achieved or not achieved, and trying to forecast something and then suffering because of that forecast is the problem. The forecasting itself is not a problem.
Do you think so? It's the
Association,
the contrast between expectations and the results.
That's it.
Yeah.
You got the word. Yeah.
Okay, you working now. Do you think being in the middle of the pendulum, if that's where that's the truth, or that's self-abidence or whatever, do you think your performance and productivity is better?
Just give you an example to demonstrate what this is like. Just take for example a student. A student is undergoing an exam, and the student is studying hard, putting in a lot of effort and giving 100% of that effort. So essentially the output should be close to 100% because the input is there, the output should be commensurate with the input. But if that same student starts wallowing in the past or glorifying himself or herself in the past, saying, oh, I performed badly earlier, I don't know how this is going to happen now, my working now, is it going to create, will I get the same result as last time, or will I get better results this time? And also then projecting it in the mind in the future, saying, oh, what happens if I don't achieve what I'm going to achieve, what I wish to achieve, and suppose I get very low marks, what will happen in my future, blah blah blah. Then what happens is the student is not able to focus and give 100% of the student's time to that task at hand, which is studying. And instead of giving the 100%, which was mentioned earlier, it will drop down to maybe 70% or 60%, because the mind is either going and working in the past in that moment of studying, or forecasting or futuristic sort of dreaming will cause that mind to wander.
So you become distracted if you're not in that
moment,
bringing the mind to the moment.
And then focusing on what the task at hand. And when that focus is there, when that doership is not there, the focus is 100%, because it's only the moment.
And that's the moments where time just flies, like you don't know where time went.
Then the concept of time doesn't exist when that focus is 100%. Time is a concept of the mind that has been created, self-created.
A lot of people claim to be living or live in self-abidance, But how can they be sure and others be sure? And I'm not saying it's a test.
The truth is, and this is the absolute truth, that there is no, if anyone claims to be in self-abidance, it suggests that there is someone who is in self-abidance. If there is someone,
You have to your hand only because.
So if there is someone who is in self-abidance, then
okay, we're all in self-abidance. I get it.
yes, that's the truth.
But
So how can then one individual say that I am in self-abidance?
Okay.
So the moment one says I am in self-abidance, there is someone to be in self-abidance. So the moment there is someone, there is the other.
okay, awareness of the truth. That's a better way to put it.
Awareness of the truth is just awareness of the truth. It's not the individual who is aware of truth. Awareness is aware.
Okay, the reason why I ask this is there's, because of the internet, there's so many people out there preaching enlightenment.
Yes.
How can we, what's the right way to say this, decipher between if that's someone that we should seek guidance from or take guidance from?
Can I give you an example of Raman Maharshi, one of the greatest sages and saints who in that body, mind, intellect complex was functioning through that. That awareness was functioning through that so-called body, mind, which was called Ramana Maharshi. There was only silence at all times. It was only when someone came and asked for guidance or requested for guidance, the answers just sometimes flowed out.
So if someone's trying to do the hard sell, there's a good chance they're probably not someone you should follow.
There's no point in pointing fingers at people. People.
But take the teachings, not the teacher.
That's exactly the point. And the teachings also are there for only a purpose. The teachings are only a tool. They are only a tool to take you so far. Because the truth, it's only a matter of removing the misconceptions that are there. The misconceptions of who we are.
What were...
It's like a piece of slab of stone, and the sculptor wants to sculpt out truth, right? And the slab of stone is considering that I am the slab of stone. Essentially, the slab of stone is the truth. So, the sculptor chips away all that is not required to reveal what is truth.
Okay, since we're here, we might as well ask, what is truth?
Truth is, and truth in plain, simple English, if it can be expressed in language or through words, is absolute pure awareness. The absolute consciousness, and these are only words. They cannot be expressed because essentially words just become useless. But if we can use the words awareness or consciousness, pure consciousness, absolute awareness, then that functioning through a body, mind, intellect is the truth. The same awareness, the same consciousness that flows through this body, mind, intellect is the same consciousness, same awareness that flows through Celeste or through any single so-called conglomeration of atoms that are called individual body, mind, intellect complexes. It's the same. Awareness is the truth. It is like electricity. It is like energy that flows through a network. And then the outlet is a manifestation. You have lamps, you have lights, you have generators, you have pumps, you have purifiers, you have chillers, but it's the same electricity that flows out. The expression that comes out is different. A lamp will show you light, a pump will rotate, etc., etc.
But what about if the expression is through coming throughout a person and it's not good? Is that pure consciousness coming through someone?
Now one is that is going into good and bad, which is a completely different concept altogether. Good and bad is a construct of society. And good and bad, what was good 500 years ago may not be good now. What was bad 500 years ago may not be bad now. So, good and bad are concepts. Truth is truth. And if truth is actually flowing, then everything is an expression of that totality.
So, you know when people say, sometimes you have to get out of your own way? Do you think maybe that's coming from sometimes you have to get out of what you think is right and the personality and let pure consciousness...
Yes, because that...
do its job?
That is the process of sadhana, that is the process of chipping away at the notional, the ignorance that is there. That's why it's called ignorance. It is called something that is not true. But it's only a mindset. It's a conceptual thing. It is only notional. It is not the truth. The moment that I comes in before you ask that question, the answer will come out, is that when someone asks for the practical way of actually trying to remove that dross, remove that negativity, so-called negativity, or that illusion that is existing, two simple sentences. One is, when the mind flows outward, action happens. And when action happens, there is a consequence of a doer, a cause and effect. The moment the mind turns inwards, it is not action anymore. Because the moment the mind turns inwards, it goes to the very source. And that is why the quest lies in who am I. The crux of the entire personality mind, the body mind personality, is because of this I. No one has investigated to find out who is this I. Everyone considers I am this body, I am this mind, I am this intellect. Are you? Investigate and find out.
And why? Why is it worth it?
The only reason that it's not one doesn't need to be doing anything of that sort. You don't need to do it. But if one feels the urge because one considers oneself as the body mind and one is suffering and wants to achieve happiness, and because of that one ventures towards finding out who am I, this is the best method. If one wants to continue to go on the path and do what one wants to do, so be it. Doesn't really matter.
So going internal is transcending the suffering, the good and the bad, the glorifying, living in the past, thinking about the future, all that. But once you turn it back to you,
that's it. then when it turns inwards, there is no one there to suffer. The body mind, and mind you, it's a funny word, mind you, but it's so funny. But
this is as far as how comedy in spirituality.
exactly right. Exactly, because words are so ordinary when it comes to expression. What can you do? But the body mind called Celeste invited the body mind called Vijay and said, I want to do a podcast. So be it.
So our next podcast will be silent. That's going to go down really well.
In silence. And I'm telling you, in the silence, truth is revealed. Silence reveals truth. And when the mind turns inwards, silence reveals itself.
It's so simple.
It is.
What's your take on past lives and karma and all that stuff that everyone talks about? You know, people go get past life readings now, and the body, the mind of Vijay. What do you think? Like,
If there is a concept of doership, and if there is a concept of and the I existing, then all the associated so-called karma, past lives, regression, forecasting, etc. comes into play. Future lives, past lives, etc. comes into play. It comes into play only because the I as the individual body mind exists as a notional tool, only as a notion. Even that is all notional. Past lives, future lives, it's only a notion because the I exists. If the I doesn't exist as the individual body mind, where is the question?
So,
of
okay,
any
the question
past
is,
lives and past.
has the I existed for thousands of years?
For whom? For whom?
I don't know. For you.
Who's you?
Yeah,
That's the
I
question.
knew you would say that. This is. It's,
No. This is not a gameplay.
Yeah.
And there's no question of trying to subvert your question here. The truth is that. That is the truth. Celeste, that is the truth.
so you come from a culture where they talk about past lives and karma as
That's
it's the way of the culture. You know, you're suffering because
But
that's your
that's-
karmic.
that same culture also had many saints and sages and scriptures and books that expressed truth in its totality, in its absolute quintessence.
Okay, this is a good topic because when I went to India last year, I saw a massive contrast. We saw a massive contrast when you go to the temples and then when you go to the ashram. It's completely different. How does a country have so much contrast when they do have the sages and all this history, and then in the other respect, it's very money orientated. The religion plays a big part. It feels sometimes, how do I say this? Contradictory. Like,
You know, life is contradictory.
yeah.
The moment
I
life
live
comes
in
into
a
play,
life of contradictions.
life
trust
is
me.
contradiction.
Yeah.
And that is
Oh,
the
so-
swing of the opposites. That is duality.
So that's what I was seeing because it was.
It's duality. You have one extreme, swing of the pendulum, which is that purity of spirituality expressed through the saints and the sages. There has to be the other swing in society of the other extreme. That's what
Okay, will
happens.
Donald Trump get
That's
re-elected?
duality.
That's good.
Predictive technology.
He Well, they went from Obama to Donald Trump, so that was a massive pendulum.
I mean, this is post-event evaluation.
Yeah.
But but anyway.
Would you describe yourself as a religious person? If someone said...
Religion and spirituality are two sides of the same coin. When the fog, as we named it earlier, is really thick, religion
so
is
true.
a wonderful truth, wonderful tool to remove some of the easier so-called low-hanging fruit of the fog.
Okay, because I went to church, used to go to church with my parents every week when we were young. And my dad used to say before we went into church, and I don't know if I told you this, that he goes, look how saint-like the people are, they take up 2 car spots. And I never forget it, because it showed me at a young age contradiction, you
That's
know.
right.
And
That's right. That is not what religion teaches you. That is what the individual who considers oneself as the individual comes and does acts which to suit him or her and doesn't care about the other person in the society. It's not religion teaching you that. It is completely different. Now, religion as a tool doesn't say do this, do wrong. No, religion says do wrong, ensure that you go and kill, go and steal. No, religion says that, right? Go and hurt another person. No, religion would say that. It is only the interpretation of
the
religion. It is only the interpretation of religion that has caused all the maladies, all the tribulations, all the suffering through
why
centuries.
Is something so good then interpreted so wrongly?
That is a moot question, because that is how it is. Just take it and move on. But ultimately, what one sees, and that is the truth. When one considers oneself as the individual body mind, what concepts that individual body mind has in his or her mind creates
The
realities, the so-called reality for that individual. It is the manifestation of circumstances are created by the individual. It is not believing is seeing. Sorry,
seeing
other way
is
around.
believing.
It is not seeing is believing, but believing
Is saying.
is seeing.
It's
Because
like-
believing creates your so-called temporary reality in front of you, and that's how circumstances eventuate.
What happens when you die? Do you
One abides in truth. One is truth. Because even that word is wrong. See, words are stupid, because there is no one to abide in truth. It's only truth. When one considers oneself as one, the I dies, there is only truth. There's
So
total
when
revelation
people
of
talk
truth.
about near-death experiences,
Awareness.
they say they see light, or they might see Jesus, or they see people that have previously passed on.
I mean, I'm jokingly saying this.
Yeah.
This is not a thing, but when a person sees Jesus, a person would be from that particular background,
So it's
who has
like-
been exposed to Jesus. A person never exposed to Jesus will never see Jesus.
So do you think the near-death is a concept in your mind that you've...
Exactly.
Even
it
at-
is
in
created
near-death.
by because the I exists as the individual body, mind, intellect. So one sees what one has accumulated out of that cauldron of accumulation,
So it's
the
just,
seeing takes place.
so it's like another dream state.
It's another dream state. And when the body dies, the body goes and it mixes with the elements of the earth.
I know this is going to be an obvious question and how you're going to answer it, but I think it's a good one to ask. How do you feel about death for yourself? Like, is that...
The true death is when the individual I, the truth is that true death is only when there is a birth, right? When there is a birth of the I as a body mind, and that disappears, that's true death. In fact, there is no birth, there is no death, because there is only truth. But if there is a concept, notional concept of I, me and myself as the individual body mind, and that notion drops away, then there is death. That is the true death. The body mind, the body dissolving into the elements of the earth is just a body coming and body going.
Why are we so attached to our body?
That is an eternal question asked for millennia, centuries.
Okay, no.
And it doesn't really make any difference, does it?
No.
Why? Because the truth is, now it is there. Why not try and remove that misconception that is there? And if one really feels that it is a misconception, try and see whether one can remove it. And that is why all the scriptures are there. If one feels, no, this is not a misconception, I am very happy as I, me and myself, hey, please go ahead, enjoy, do what you, be absorbed in that I consciousness, go through the swing of the pendulum. One then comes to a stage when one realizes that, one really needs to find out who I am. then things start happening. So
It's really hard to ask you good questions, Deja vu. I know it's in that place of karma and lies, but what does it have a meaning? You know when you have that feeling?
it is.
Okay.
It is. It has a meaning as long as the body mind, when that individual, the doership is there, it has a meaning, right?
So if you're in a place and you feel like you've been there before and you're the first time there.
Yes, it's valid because.
What does it tell you? What's it saying? Like what's?
It actually only expresses what the body mind has experienced in the past. And it is just showing that the same event is happening again. It's like a multiplicity of that same event occurring again. That's I've been there, done that before, is that feeling of deja vu as expressed. So that feeling is only because of the memories. If there is no memory...
But if you don't have the memory in
then there's no deja vu.
Yeah.
There's no deja vu. But every body mind...
So would you still have deja vu?
The body mind functioning has deja vu. Even the greatest saints and sages that existed in the past, who have gone beyond the limitation of the I, where the doership has died, the body mind still has deja vu. Or the body mind still responds to the call. So when Ramana Maharshi or some other saint was called by his or her name, the response would be there. Because the body mind is still functioning. But that doership is gone. And that's the only difference.
The awareness that there is a difference.
Awareness is awareness, as is.
So we operate parallel, pure consciousness and body mind.
We don't operate.
Well,
The body mind operates as
so I couldn't ask the question to you as what's the percentage of you operating in body mind versus pure consciousness, because that doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. Because the body mind is operating as body mind. If the doership is not there, the doership is not there. Because
but
awareness
it's still
is only,
going.
the body mind continues to go. Even now, Celeste, for you, as considering oneself as the body mind, if you believe that you are doing it, then you're doing it. But if you don't consider yourself as the doer and the doership drops away for you right this very moment, the functioning as it was doing before will continue.
So,
it doesn't.
You know, when we think that we've created this life and done all this stuff, is it us that's actually doing it, or
arrogating oneself with the responsibility of I am doing it?
Yes.
That is where doership is. That is where the whole issue of I, me, myself comes into play. Arrogating oneself with that feeling of, I am doing it. That's what we are talking about, right?
So when you go to work, who's doing the work?
The body mind. It's working. The functioning takes place. The functioning would have taken place if the doership was there. The functioning is taking place if the doership is not there. Functioning continues. The only difference being that when the doership is there, the output gets reduced.
I know it.
As expressed in
but
that,
I don't know
it remains a theory until such time that the clarity becomes absolutely clear, and that comes as an expression of experience. When the body mind intellect is the doership is there, experiences come, and when those experiences come, the association is still there, and then the experience also disappears because there is no doer.
So is this like the things fall away?
It's an experiential-less experience. And that's why it's called a stateless state. People say, oh, are you in a state of self-abidence, in awareness? There is no state. That is a stateless state. And there is no one to be in that state. These words are very, very confusing.
I know, because
that's
a stateless state like that. I mean, where do you go
Because
with that?
there's
Because
only
your mind is trying to work it out, but the thing is, your mind's not going to find the answer. That's the conundrum of it all.
Can we discuss one thing, and that is the truth, which is, don't look for answers and don't look for answers to your queries. Just try and go inwards. The answers are already there. Questions are only being asked because the doership is there. The answers will reveal themselves as truth when the doership drops away. When the doership is there, the questions are asked, and when words are spoken as so-called answers, they are only words. They are not the truth, because they are concepts in the mind for the recipient of that answer. But when there is revelation of truth, and there is abidance in truth, as we call it, then those very words become a revelation in itself. There are no concepts not concepts anymore.
Does illness come from a spiritual reason or technical? And what I mean technical is if someone gets sick, is it because it's genetic? Or
that could be several reasons, right? The body undergoes pain. The body undergoes pain. Body undergoes whatever it has to go through. If Raman Maharshi, Nisargadatta Maharaj all went through pain, the so-called bodies went through pain before the body fell off.
Oh, so it's a natural...
It's just a natural thing. It's as long as the doership is not there, there's no suffering.
What do you...
And that's the answer, Celeste, to your question, where you asked, why do we have to go through that? So, if the body is undergoing pain and the doership is there, one is suffering because one associates with that body. But if the doership is not there, there is no suffering. Doesn't that individual who considers oneself as the individual want to get away from that suffering? Simple.
So just say you hurt your leg and it's sore, you don't, you see it as the body is in pain.
The body is in pain.
So you think just by that notion, you reduce the pain or the suffering around the pain. Oh, suffering is not physical.
It's only
this
is
the clarification.
It's only association. It's pure association.
Okay. What do you think about the current state of humanity? It's a big question. Do you feel optimistic?
Oh yes, it's always every single individual, every single person in this manifestation is progressing towards only and only that which is the truth. Even the worst perpetrator of crimes is only and only doing it to be happy. No one does anything to say, today I really want to suffer. Today I really want to, be very unhappy.
But
no one does that.
Yeah.
No one does that. Everyone only and only does any action because one wants to be happy. Even the worst of crimes. Only because one thinks that one will gain something good out of it and gain happiness out of it. To the mind, maybe it's completely wrong. So, the progression from that doing really bad things to being slightly better goes on. So, the progression is always there towards that highest truth.
So just by default, we're getting better.
Oh yes, no two ways about it. That is in the conceptual world of illusion. That is why in the scripture it's called Maya. Maya means it's an illusion. This life is a long dream. The life of an individual is only a long dream. You sleep at night, you wake up in the morning, you feel, that was a dream. This is seen as a longer dream. You come out of the dream and then there was no dreamer, no dreamt, and no dreaming. The process of dreaming drops away. There is only pure
So if you're
awareness.
living in the dream,
Who is living in the dream?
the body, the mind is in the dream.
Let it.
But what's your relationships with your family and wife and children and parents,
It's
work colleagues?
Beautiful. Because then there is no other. If the doership is not there for if the doership is not there, then there is no other. As soon as there is an I, there is the other. Whenever
so
there is
you're like
another,
selfless. It's
then,
like
then,
that.
then it becomes, and there is no, even the word selfless, there is no meaning, because there is no other, right? There is only the expression coming out through this body mind, and the expression coming out through that body mind, but the awareness through this body mind is the same awareness through that body mind. If you can call this and that, there is no this and that.
So you don't have arguments with your wife, or tell your kids to study, or get a good job, or
the arguments generally tend to not be there. But even if there is a a difference of opinion, as they call it, even there the opinion is only when there is such a work that is happening, and then one says, oh, let's do it this way, let's do it that way. The expression that comes out through a body mind and the other person, the partner's body mind, could be different, but it's still the same. It happens and it just gets resolved. There's no issues, because then it becomes a unity. There's no.
So you just kind of deal with the situation, whatever it is,
in that very moment,
and then it never.
That's it. Done.
I love that. That's great.
The,
So are you living example that you can be in this spiritual journey and evolution or whatever, and still have a human body, mind, life? You can have both.
You've been to Raman Maharshi's ashram, right?
Yeah.
You've seen that he lived for 40 years after being in complete abidance. When the doership completely dropped away, from the age of 16 till the age of 69, he lived in complete self-abidance. When you say he, that body mind, and the expression was only through that body mind, but awareness was functioning through that body mind. The same with Nisargadatta Maharaj.
Yeah, but he didn't have a family, or.
Nisargadatta Maharaj did.
Oh, sorry, I don't know.
Yes, Nisargadatta Maharaj had family. The body mind of Nisargadatta Maharaj had family, had kids, and he lived in a really small apartment. And people used to just come in and
Visit.
get drawn to him like, honey,
Bees to
honey. Bees to flowers.
I feel like this is a stupid question, but I'm going to ask it. Channeling, fortune telling, Acacia records, all that stuff.
Same thing. It's all valid. It's fine. Like going into past lives, regression, channeling, your deja vu, all that, yes. Within the dream, yes. All valid. You would have the same thing, these same questions when you're sleeping at night. You can have exactly the same things. You could be doing channeling, you could be going through, regression periods in that same very dream at night. The same thing is valid. As long as that dream is there, it's valid. As long as the doership is there, it's valid. No one denying the validity of that.
Okay, this is my last question. And then feel free to add anything else that you think might be helpful for the listeners. I'm going to rephrase it from the education of this session. How do we reduce the veil or the fog?
There are so many techniques and there are so many ways one can do it. Every moment one can do it. And if that really true aspiration, that true wanting is there, that doer wants that to get out of the doership, when the doer wants to get out of the doership, there are so many ways, but there are. I can name several practical examples.
Yeah.
Be good, do good. Swami Shivananda of the Divine Life Society in India, he had given these aphorisms or these simple techniques. It's called the yoga of synthesis. And it's be good, do good, be kind, be compassionate. Inquire who am I, know thyself, and then be free. And also he said, serve, love, give, purify. So these are all words, but when you use the word serve, even though the doership is there, serve the other selflessly.
Not give to get.
So it's like your left hand should not know what your right hand is doing. Because, it's just a way of saying it, but it should be done without any expectation. Because the moment you do something good, the mind immediately says, I've done something good. As soon as that happens, there is more establishment of that I. So when the good is done, let the good be done, forget about it. Don't even associate the mind with that. It's done, dusted, forget about it. But the mind will want to, revel in that glory of, I'm such a good person. That's the catch.
Do you think that's trained behaviour in the mind?
That's because of the doership, that's all. It's not the trained behavior. That's how the doership causes that aspect of it, of trying to justify. The ego wants to become stronger and stronger and stronger. Same thing, serve, love. Love selflessly.
Okay. That sounds great.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's
How
hard.
do you do that?
It's hard. Because the ego is there, it's always hard. When the ego drops away, that's why we are talking about chipping away. We are not talking about dropping the whole thing straight away, right? It is that fog has to disappear slowly, slowly, slowly. But it's a process. But when that clarity becomes absolutely clear, then it just drops away. It's like a person trying to break a piece of stone. And he goes and takes a chisel and goes and hammers. And he takes a hammer and he goes and hammers. He may hit 300 times. The 300th time, the stone breaks. It doesn't mean that the 300th hit is the one that did it.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It is the 299 that actually gave the impetus for the 300 stroke to break it. So you have to chip away slowly.
So give us just tiny practical chip away.
That is it. Serve.
So do good for others without...
Love.
Okay.
Give. Without expectation. All these are without expectation. Give. Don't take as much as give.
So what about all this meditation and going to satsangs and going to India ashrams and all that?
These are only tools to try and purify yourself a little more. You go and do it, it's good. It's good. But the moment the ego gets emboldened, if the ego gets emboldened because of that,
because you think it's elevating.
It's elevating yourself. Then all you're doing is establishing the ego even more. The purpose of all this is only ego dropping away. Whatever you may do, look for only one thing. Ego has to drop away.
The only thing I've learned is that I'm always better to not say anything.
You know what? That's the best. The moment one says something, one says it because of the ego. But if saying happens, let it happen. The best judge is the ego, the doer who considers oneself as the ego. The best judge. Nobody else can judge. Everyone else can be seeing something that could be an apparent version of trying to show. As you said, there are so many do-gooders in the world, showing themselves up as I am this and I am that. But that's an expression, outward thing. You see something. Only that person knows what is there inside. So don't worry about the world. Because the world is an expression of you. Only because you are there, the world is there. The I is there and your reality is created. Go inwards. Questions that are there will no longer remain as questions. You don't need answers for that. Because there are no answers to questions. The questions will drop away. There will be no more questions.
So we might really see the death of the podcast.
No, see, this is a different matter altogether, right?
Yeah,
Within this play, the cosmic play, so-called cosmic play, this is all fun and games.
Yeah, and I guess you probably do more as a result because if you think that way.
Yeah. We've met on several occasions and we have discussed these things, and you've always had that outlook towards it's such fun. As long as the enjoyment is there, you're not doing anything that is taking your mind away from your goal, which is dropping away of the ego, and you're trying to chip away.
No, it's fun because it's the only thing I know that is not intellectual.
And also,
the intellect will not give you the answer, and that is baffling.
That's it.
In itself.
That's absolute truth. And if that helps in chipping away of the ego, so continue and do that. So when you said the podcast, the death of the podcast, if the podcast is helping you chip away at that notional ego and helping you to be a better individual, and you can see that the peace, the silence is growing, why not? The death of the podcast will then happen with the death of the doer.
I might go back to the ashram. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been great.
It's been wonderful.